I like to begin just kind of introducing, and many of you have seen this before, but want to introduce the Rothman Institute. Our mission is to support, promote, and research entrepreneurship with a special focus on family and veteran businesses. We wouldn't exist without our funders, our supporters, and our friends, the TD Bank Charitable Foundation, Provident Bank, Sun Trust, Commerce and Industry Association of New Jersey. Tony Russo may be joining us a little later, the CEO. The programs that we have, obviously, we're at Fairleigh Dickinson University. We have student entrepreneurship programs that have been around for 30 years. One of our best known programs is something called FDU Pitch, where we have a competition within the university of students, undergraduate and graduate, who have a business idea and they win real cash. The winner goes on to a statewide competition with all of the major universities at the former Bell Labs, and it's a wonderful program. I also teach a family business management, a course for undergraduate students. So we're really trying to make sure that FDU is known as an entrepreneurial campus. We have our Family Business Alliance, which many of you are members of, where we provide fascinating speakers like today, but we have a coaching session, a private coaching session. We do consulting, and we do individual coaching with executives. We have our Family Business Awards. We're excited. This is our 28th year. It's going to be in October. I was hopeful that we were going to do it in person. We're still trying to make that decision, but it doesn't seem like things are opening up as I had hoped they would. And so in this program, we honor a number of family businesses, but we present the Family Business of the Year under 10 million in self-reported sales and over 10 million, and a number of nominees again on this program, as I can see. Also, we have a program called Veterans Launching Ventures, where we help veteran businesses develop business plans. Say a little more about that. And a small business series, where we have some real legends in the business to talk about some of the challenges and opportunities for small businesses. We've started Family Business Week last year. Many people know about American Express Small Business Week. So family businesses are actually more than 80% of the global economy, about half of the American economy. But they need to be celebrated. So every fourth week in October, we have Family Business Week, where we're encouraging people to identify and support a family business. We hope they do that all year round. But certainly during that week, we want you to celebrate family businesses. We have a website, Shop Family, where people can buy gift cards for restaurants and others that are struggling during this pandemic. I have a TV show called Family Business World. Valerie Drew, our guest, was one of my guests on the show. It's on RVN TV, streamed every Thursday at 10 a.m. and 8 p.m. And also the past shows are on our Rothman Institute of Entrepreneurship on the YouTube channel. Obviously, our Family Business Fridays, which we hope to do through the end of the year. And we just thank many of you who are regulars on this program. Again, our Veterans Launching Ventures, where we work with veterans and immediate family members of veterans to really take them through an 8-week program where they develop a business plan. We help them continue the business, and many of them are able to get funding and take the business to a very, very high level. And again, this is our YouTube channel, which has a lot of our old videos. I have the honor, and we had a session yesterday of being on New Jersey Restart Recovery Advisory Council, focused on Main Street, focused on the small businesses. And obviously many of them are really struggling. And so we're advocating for small businesses, which is really what we're doing at the Rothman Institute, is really to try to be a voice of small businesses and provide information and support. Working with people like Tony Russo of CIANJ. Again, I show this slide, and you know, we're still in the midst of this crisis. I like to show this slide, as many of you have seen, is that we often talk about the challenges of 2009, 2010, where we had 700,000 was the highest weekly unemployment. You look at where we are now, upwards in the millions, because this is a small business crisis. And you can see the unemployment claims had gone down, and now they're going back up in some states, almost at Great Depression levels at their peak. But it's important to understand that that's because small businesses employ much of America. And this chart, which I love, really shows that almost 70% of the businesses have fewer than 100 employees, 20% have fewer than 500 employees, and only 10% have the big businesses. But one of the, represent the big businesses, but one of the challenges is that big businesses and unions, large unions, have enough money to hire lobbyists. So politicians, policymakers hear a lot from the lobbyists representing those groups, but the margins are so slim in small businesses that they don't hear much from us. And so one of the things we're trying to do is to be a much louder voice for that. So what we want to do to kick off today is with Valerie and John is John had provided some statistics. So on this next chart, we share some of the cybercrime statistics. And as I said, this program, I learned so much as an individual, not only as a business owner, about cybercrimes talking to these two experts. So John, you want to talk about this this statistic?
Yeah, so I just want to sort of thank everyone for having me. Again, I'm John Kowal. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Peapack-Gladstone Bank in New Jersey here, and I've been at the bank for about 4.5 years. Prior to that, I was in technology consulting, focusing on financial services and also large enterprise companies. And, I frequently do work with our clients at the bank to help secure their businesses and respond to cybersecurity events and concerns that they have. So I do see a lot and can certainly share what we're seeing as the major concerns right now. We do have a lot to discuss today. Last time I spoke to the Small Business Series, Dale, was in December, so a lot's happened since then. But the fundamentals of cybersecurity are still there, and we're going to talk about those. So, let's talk about some of these statistics, because we're seeing some very high numbers with new cybercrime. So the FBI is saying there's a 300% increase in cybercrime since 2019. Basically, they were handling 1,000 cases per day, and they're now receiving 3,000 to 4,000 per day. So it's excessive and it's high. When surveyed, employees are seeing cybersecurity and data security really as a nuisance. They're cutting corners, and they're at home, so no one's looking over their shoulders to make sure they're not doing it. Ransomware, it's a computer virus. We'll talk a little about that. Will lock you out of your computer and lock you out of your files and demand payment. And it varies. For small businesses, a little lower, but the average cost to get your files back has skyrocketed into the 6 figures. But for a small business, expect to still pay $10,000+ to get your files back. It used to be $100, $300. Those numbers have skyrocketed. So, protecting yourself against viruses is huge. And scammers are just really big on COVID-19. When news hit the press, over 40,000 high-risk websites were created. So think, you go to some website, covid19info.org or something, you go there to get information, but it delivers a computer virus in the background. So why all this increase? First, really the attackers are preying on uncertainty. And there was uncertainty about the virus spread, the proposed government stimulus programs. The government hadn't even finalized any bills yet, but people were starting to hear about stimulus programs. So before the bill even became law, scammers were out there saying, please pay $25 for your stimulus check to be direct deposited, and we need all your tax info. So you lose money, you lose your identity, or please e-sign these documents related to your stimulus payment, and then you get a computer virus. You can see a little ad, 6 people in your neighborhood have been infected. Click here to view details and get a computer virus. They prey on uncertainty. And second, companies rush into new technology. You have millions of people, some who have never worked home before, now working from home full-time, using new technology for the first time. Attackers knew this. They heavily targeted virtual meetings, e-sign, virtual private networks, webmail. Some major companies were hit very hard during the transition to remote work. And I know it's been a difficult year for small business. Our bank was a very active participant in the Paycheck Protection Program lending. I had the opportunity to speak with many small business owners. The challenges, the changes, the uncertainty, it's really unprecedented. And while you're trying to use technology to stay competitive, cyber attacks are drastically increasing, but that's okay. That's what we're here to discuss. We're going to have some real practical tips for you today. There's some great technology you can safely use to keep in touch with your clients. So I think we'll have a good discussion. I'll turn it over to Valerie.
Perfect. I'll switch. But before I do, I like to call out John's background is not a virtual background. That's his real house. He said his wife is an interior decorator. I'm giving you credit because everybody has these virtual backgrounds and they think it's virtual. So that's a real background. So good.
Well, thank you. I can speak on a corporate level for the bank, and my wife is a small business owner, so I can see both sides. And this is a result of her interior design business.
Yeah. Valerie, you have a whole bunch of stuff, but if you could, go through some of these good computer security practices.
Absolutely. So my name is Valerie Drew. I'm the Vice President and COO of Deustche Bank. I focus on non-financial risk, which definitely includes cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. We're starting to see new trends in the industry now where artificial intelligence is being used to actually make your virus protection software useless. And so we'll touch on that a little bit. But basically, I would like for everyone to engage in a self-test. And what the self-test is going to do is to allow you to start thinking about the practices that you use within, not just at your company, but also at home. So the first question that we're going to ask is, how many people share the same login, ID, and password on a computer at work and at home? I'm going to skip around a little bit. Another question I would like to ask is, do you do online banking? Do you have a data backup policy that you back up your data that you're doing for work? Do you allow access to personal email on your business computer? You know, Gmail and things like that. What about those cute downloads that you have, those cute little images that you see that's just so cute, you have to have it, that calendar, that puppy, that sleeping, all those wonderful things. A key question is, do you have a computer policy that you implement at work? And do you have cybersecurity insurance? And then I want you to think about this throughout the entire presentation is, what is the cost of the average computer breach? And then what is the cost to your company or your business reputation?
Excellent. Great question.
So I think John has already gone over a lot of these points. But one of the things that if you could just go back one of the things that I would like to highlight and underline is that cyber attack costs to medium-sized companies have increased from $44,000 to $184,000 in 2019, and it's rising. Companies once hacked will experience multiple breaches within the same year. And then also you need to pay attention to the fine print on your policies that you have or your accounts that you open with banks, because banks do not have to repay funds stolen from a business account if commercially responsible safeguards are in place. And we'll talk about that a little bit further. So next slide. Okay, so you need to know what to do if you're ever hit with a cyber attack. The first thing is you want to first put in place a good computer policy. Within that computer policy, you're going to have an incident response that you're going to do and you're going to implement. And where do you keep this information? Not on your computer. You print it off and you keep it someplace that you can access, either in a safe, because if you are hacked and you're unable to access your computer, you're not going to be able to get to these particular topics. So you definitely want to reach out to law enforcement and let them know that you've been breached, that you've had a problem. You want to then go and start with your incident response process that you've documented out. You definitely want to call your attorney. You want to get your internet service provider involved. And you want to go through the necessary steps to just minimize the actual incident that you are occurring during the breach. Next slide.
I think we'll go right to some questions now.
Sure.
Because you both are so knowledgeable. I mean, we could really spend the whole afternoon. And so I'll ask it. I'll start with John. But what are some of the best practices? You've mentioned some of those things, John, and then Valerie. Just for the average person. Now, assume folks don't know what's going on. So, what are some of the best practices?
Yeah, so there are some very important things you need to remember when it comes to cybersecurity. And these things, they would have prevented a majority of really the fraud and cybercrime cases I've seen this year and in past years. So first, let's talk about two-step verification or what they call multi-factor authentication. This is you log in to a website with your password and you get a text message with a code in it. If someone has your password but not your cell phone, they can't get into your account. So where possible, enable it on any website you log into. This is almost always completely free. And I always say start with email. Email is really your crown digital asset. Protecting access to your email is becoming almost as important as protecting your social security number.
Wow.
If someone gets your email, think of what they can do with it. They can reset passwords to websites. They can impersonate you amongst your peers, your colleagues, etc. So if a website asks for your email address and password, you really got to say, why are they doing that? Second, callback procedures. All right. So this is the premise. If you get an email or text asking for a financial transaction, just give the person a call to confirm. Call them at a known phone number that you know, and make sure it was them. If the email says, don't call me, I'm busy, because they can't talk, that's even more reason to call them. It's suspicious. You want to make sure that you make contact with the person who sent you that email. And I'll give you an example of a business we recently worked with. So they received an email from their vendor asking them to send their next month's bill to their new bank. And it was a major US bank, a real household name, and it came from the actual email address of the vendor. They sent payment to the new bank, and it turns out the vendor's email was hacked. So the hacker crafted a very professional looking email. And from a technical perspective, the email was fine. It did come from the company. It didn't have a virus. It didn't have weird links. It didn't have broken English. It was just not accurate. The company was not changing banks. It was a scam. Someone had broken into the email. And this is a very common scam. But again, from a technology perspective, I couldn't look at that email and say, this is not legitimate. What I would tell you to do is call your vendor and say, hey, are you switching banks? Because I got this email from you saying that you're switching banks. And just validate that it was real. Because again, these numbers with this type of fraud, we're not talking a couple $100. These are big numbers. And third, separate your business and personal life as much as possible. And again, this starts with email. I really encourage you, have a separate work email account if you don't already, that you only use for work. And also, I recommend having a separate computer that you only use for work. Now, I know, listen, that's an expensive proposition, but in alternatives, think of this: use your desktop or laptop for your work, and use a tablet or smartphone, which are a lot cheaper than a full-blown computer, for your web browsing, your Facebook, your social media, etc. And that way you keep them separate, and you're going to solve a lot of things by doing that. And fourth, keep a backup. Back up your data. There are many great cloud backup services out there. If you use cloud storage, you have products like OneDrive, Box, Dropbox, Google Docs, etc. They have some good backup functionality built in. But also a DVD can store a lot of data. And if you take a DVD, copy your company data to it, and safely and securely store it in a vault, no one can get to that. No hacker can get to that. It's what we call an offline backup. And, so long as you do that regularly, you're going to be safe. So you should at least try to do that once a month. Even if you have a cloud backup, just have that offline backup. So no matter what, you always have your data, right?
Right.
So,
Valerie's smiling, so I want to give her, Valerie,
I just want to add one thing. A lot of times you will see companies, when you go into them, restaurants especially, or coffee shops, where they say free Wi-Fi. You should not allow free Wi-Fi to be connected to your corporate internet access, because I can sit there all day long and just look at the traffic going across your corporate your corporate network. I can get into your email. I can see your calendar, and that's what I want to do. I want to get into your email. I want to sit there, and I want to do some analysis in terms of when you're going to be away, when you're going to be in meetings for a long period of time, because that is when I'm going to hack you, because it's going to be a while before you figure it out. I want to see when you're going to be away on vacation. These are all the things that a hacker would want to see in order to compromise you. Also, I especially agree with John in terms of keeping your network separate, keeping your computer separate, but also bank accounts. One very wise thing to do is, and I recommend this totally for small businesses. When I ran my own company, this is what I did. I have one account that's accounts receivable only, and I paid my bills once a month. When it's time to pay those bills, I will then fund that other account for the exact amount. So irregardless of what was going on, my banker knew there was only one account that's coming in with the money, and there was only one account that was going out to fund or pay those bills. And those bills are paid basically the same day, the same time, every month. So there's never anything that's going out at 1 o'clock in the morning. There's nothing going out at 7 o'clock in the afternoon. It's always going out at a specific time. So those are some additional, very simple things that you can put in place to make yourself safer.
I would never have thought of that. John, you're smiling now. What?
Yeah, well, and so actually, I just saw we had a question come in.
Yeah,
Bring your own device and how common that is in small companies, and
right.
that's becoming common in large companies as well too.
Mhm.
And a lot of that is, so how do you protect against that? It is their devices. First, there are products called mobile device management solutions, right? These allow you to see, what kind of devices do I have connected? Do they all have the latest software updates? And if they don't, or if there's something about the device, if you heard of jailbroken phones, that's not a good thing. You don't want your corporate information on that phone. You can pull back your corporate information right away. Or if someone leaves the company, you can pull back your corporate information right away so that it's not still on their phone. So that's certainly important. I certainly want to bring up training, right? So, a lot of what we're seeing is what we call social engineering. These aren't viruses. It's again, that CEO who's someone faking to be your CEO saying, please wire out $60,000. And you need those good procedures, as we've been talking about. But it doesn't hurt to test your employees. Even if it's just a matter of you creating a fake email and pretending to be yourself and seeing who falls for it or seeing who actually verifies it was you who sent that. There are products like there's a product Know Before that we use that allow you to test phish your employees and then keep them really on their toes.
I
Yeah.
agree. Definitely training is something that you want to do, but also with bring your own device prior to you actually implementing that process, you definitely should have an overall training program as well as a security awareness program. And security awareness is something that you want to do on a regular basis. Once a year is not enough. This is something that you want to do on an ongoing basis. It is very important for individuals to sign a policy agreement, a policy usage agreement in terms of what is allowable and what is not allowable, even though they're bringing their own device to work.
Right. And where would they get a template for that? Or where would somebody find this?
I'm glad you asked. There are a lot of free templates out there, and Dell, the pack that I sent over to you actually has the link to those templates. So if you don't mind, if you will broker that to whomever is looking for that, or we could do another session on just creating computer policies, incident responses. We could do a session on that as well if you like.
Wonderful. We had a great conversation in preparation for this, and I just learned so much. Both of you know instances of this cyberware. And I don't know if either one of you wanted to talk about some particular instances and what do you do? What do you do when you're caught?
So sure, I'll go first. So there are tons of incidents of cyber breaches that we can talk to, especially with small and medium-sized businesses. There was one I was just reading about by a small construction company called Peapack-Gladstone, where $588,000 were transferred out of the computer system by doing ACH transfers, bank wire transfers, and the bank was able to help them recap back 345,000 of those particular dollars. And so I guess the number one thing, John pointed out some very good things about your vendors saying that they're transferring and using a new banking system. No one is going to transfer to a new banking system overnight. There's usually going to be some type of communication that goes on. There's going to be some type of parallel period where they're still accepting it from the original bank to the other bank, and then there's a cutoff period. So there's usually a process that people go through for that. So don't fall for anything like that. The number one thing is have a plan. Just like when the lights go out, you know where the flashlights are, you know where the batteries are. Have a plan so that when the incident does occur, you execute your plan. And that plan is in writing. It's something that you can put your hands on. It's not on your computer system.
John?
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize that you have to have a plan. So we talked a little bit about ransomware, where you get that pop-up, hey, your files are encrypted. You have 48 hours to unlock them or pay the ransom to unlock them. Remember, that countdown doesn't give you time to call a security expert. Even if you say, hey, listen, I can get someone here in 48 hours. A lot of times if these viruses detect that you're tampering with them, they will destroy all your data. And there are a lot of cases where companies have had situations like that, where they get a ransom demand. they ignore it and they say, I got to call everyone. And you should be calling people, but you got to have a plan about what you're going to do. Again, there are a lot of plans online. The government offers a lot of plans too that Valerie was talking about to help you prepare for these incidents. But time is really of the essence when you get that warning, because if the attackers sense that you're trying to get help, that someone's trying to get the virus out of your system, and they say, hey, listen, this guy's not going to pay the ransom, they will go in and they'll just wipe your files, because they don't want you to find out who they are. You know, they want to remain anonymous. So if you bring in a cybersecurity firm, get this virus off my network, you know, they're going to find out, well, it came from here. So they want to cover their tracks, and to cover the tracks, they'll wipe all your files. They'll wipe your network.
Yes, and yes.
For that.
Definitely. And for those of you who have your telephone that goes over your network, be very careful. You pick up that telephone to make that call, they know it because they're in there. So use a separate device, right? So a lot of companies, it's just cheaper to do your internet and your phone system and everything over the internet in one thing. But keep in mind, assume that anything associated or connected to your computer is compromised, including your phone system.
So one of the things, an accountant was talking about one of his clients that I think was a small bank that actually, you know, had to deal with this cyber hostage. And it was interesting. They said that they paid the money. The company actually helped them get their system back up, and they actually were helpful. And they said, well, the reason they do that is they don't want a bad reputation of paying the money and then killing your data anyway. Is that true, or are people just becoming more rogue? And are there different, you know, I thought that was an interesting thing. You're smiling, John.
You know, it sounds fake, but I'll tell you, it's 100% true. If you get one of those viruses, they very often have a support number, a way to contact them. The people are helpful, friendly, easily accessible. They will help you restore your files. They will help you. Typically, you're using a cryptocurrency to actually pay them. So they will help you set that up, transfer money to the cryptocurrency, transfer them the money. Believe it or not, they were actually offering discounts during the initial phases of COVID-19 because they knew businesses were struggling. So how nice of them, right? But you're right. I mean, if they start saying, you know, pay us $10,000 to get your files back, and you pay them and you don't get your files back, no one's going to pay. So these run like full businesses with call centers, support numbers. It's terrifying, but unfortunately there are countries where, you know, we can't extradite criminals. They just they set up businesses, and the government doesn't unfortunately crack down on that. They attack U.S. companies, and they can run these full operations. So it's very scary stuff. It's very well organized, and that's really the takeaway. Well organized. Don't think you can trick them. You got to be smart, be prepared. Prevention is the best thing, but having a plan for when it happens, you know, that's critical.
Yep.
And keep in mind that a lot of these criminal organizations are just that, criminal organizations, and they use these tactics to fund their criminal activities. And so they are extremely organized. And as John pointed out, they do have help desk, and the people appear to be very nice, but it is a criminal organization. So it is important for you to get the law enforcement involved as soon as possible. And remember, call from a separate phone.
Well, so my job is to ask questions that, you know, that people are often scared. And so I've seen enough TV shows to hear this thing called the dark web. What the heck is the dark web? And I know people want to ask that question. They have no idea what they're talking about. How do you have a web within a web? What is that?
So basically, the dark web is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a private thing. Mm-hmm. It's a private network that is global, and it's basically, there are some criminal activities which are on the dark web, but there are also some very legitimate activities which are on the dark web. It basically, believe it or not, it started really from the military, because it's a lot of secretive things that are going on. It's a network. It's a globalized network where information is being shared. But there are some activities which are very private. What makes it the dark web is the structure of it. Without getting into the very technical aspects of it, it has a certain type of architecture that's really hard to to follow or to, how can I say, to mine through all of the different layers and levels that exist within it, but it does exist. It's not, you can literally go on the dark web, and if you're interested in knowing how to go on the dark web, I can show you how to do it in a safe way.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we have Tony Russo is joining us, the CEO of Commerce and Industry Association of New Jersey. Tony, how are you? Oh, you're on mute. You're still on mute.
Sorry. Good morning, everybody. Or I should say good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me on, Dale.
Good afternoon. And so Valerie and John are the best, you know, they're the best in the business. I know CIA&J, you have over 1,000 members. What are some of the questions you've heard about this from some of your members?
Yeah, and a great discussion. Thanks, John and Valerie. And I actually sent the question, but a few of our members wanted to know, since most of their employees are working from home, there's the thing called the VPN. So people are dialing in through the VPN. Other folks are dialing directly into the server. Can you maybe talk about how people have to be careful when they're sharing data, that sometimes if you're working from home, it doesn't go through the firewalls or the protection that you normally would when you're in an office?
Yeah, so what a VPN is a very good solution, because what it does is it takes your computer and puts it on the company's network. So it's almost like you're in the office. It creates a very secure link. It secures encrypts all your traffic to your company. So it works very well. But there are a few things. If your computer is infected with the virus, now that virus is on the company's network. Conversely, if you download files from the company's network onto your computer and save them, and then you lose your computer or it gets stolen, then those files are now at risk. They could be taken by whoever the theft was. So it's very important that, again, to Valerie's point, that you have a company computer policy, that you set certain expectations. And again, there's software out there, mobile device management software, that can determine, yes, my employee's using their personal computer, but before they connect to my network, I know that they have antivirus enabled. I know that they have, the latest updates for their computer. And I know that their computer firewall is turned on, and some other basic security settings are there so that the data on their personal computer is still protected. It is very important to keep your information stored on your company servers and on your cloud systems, rather than have it on your local laptop. Again, there's encryption available for local laptops, but you can't necessarily rely that all your employees' laptops are encrypted, that they're safeguarding it. And again, what are other family members doing? Are other family members using that computer to connect into their school? And how safe is that school network? That's why I really like the idea of where you can, even as an employee, as an employee, if I'm told to bring your own device, and in banking, we don't really do that, but if I'm told to bring your own device, I will, start using my home computer for work use only, and just use a tablet or an iPhone. Again, I know it's an expensive proposition, but there's so many benefits to just really keeping your work and personal separate. My wife has a small business, as I mentioned, and we have a laptop. It's an older laptop, but it's only for her work purposes, and it works well, and it keeps organized too. So there are a lot of benefits to just keeping everything as separate as possible.
And to add to that, a VPN is a virtual private network. So when you think about a virtual private network, it's basically a pipe, a tunnel that goes directly from you to them. What companies are supposed to do with that virtual private network is, before you get too far into the network environment, when you first come in, they're going to scan you. They're going to check you. They're going to make sure you're not infected. Similar to the way that happens to you when you go into a restaurant and they take your temperature before you get through the door. They're going to check all these things out to make sure that you're not infected. Once you pass the smell test, if you will, you are then allowed to go about and do what you normally do. But that is just the beginning. In terms of data, there is something known as the GDPR, which is the General Data Privacy Regulation, right? Which exists today. It started in California, which means, and a lot of data privacy rules and laws and regulations occur within companies. Most companies do not allow you to download corporate data onto your personal device. If you are, case in point, when I worked at MetLife, I was head of trading analytics applications, as well as head of the environments team, and I stood up the data center. One of the challenges that we actually had a data breach, because one of the highest performing insurance agents downloaded data to his laptop. And at the airport, he was working on his laptop, went for drinks, forgot his laptop. And so now you have people's account numbers, social security code, addresses. Can you imagine what people can do with that type of information? So my point is, you do not allow downloading of corporate data onto personal devices for no reason at all. There's just not a reason to do it. In today's time, you have cloud environments, you have all these other environments that people can utilize. There's no reason for anyone to download corporate data onto their personal device.
Mhm.
Great.
And I'll just give a really quick tip there too, because I know a lot of people say, well, how do we really enforce that? There are obviously very sophisticated ways to do it. One strategy though is what you'd call like a virtual desktop, or even simply enough, they have a computer at your headquarters location and they use their personal computer to remote into your network and then remote into their computer. So they see their computer like it was at work. You know, they can use their computer like it was at work, but everything they're doing is actually on their computer at work. It's not on their personal computer. It's almost like they're looking through to their computer at work. So everything's stuck in there, everything's contained in their computer at work. And that's a good, effective way to isolate the corporate information from really the personal information on the person's computer.
Great question.
Just an ignorant question, but if I'm using the VPN and I have a desktop at home or a laptop and I save something to my hard drive, is it saved to the hard drive on the home computer or at your desk back at work?
If you're going through your Citrix desktop, which is what John was just describing, is going to be saved at work. In fact, a lot of companies don't allow people to save sensitive data to the company to their personal hard drive at work either. You have to save it in a particular share or some other particular location. And the reason for that is because there's a process involved in data. Every data that people touch nowadays should be tagged, and it should be tagged with either confidential, strictly confidential, public or whatever. And based upon the tagging of that information will allow that information to be stored in certain locations. That's putting together a good data policy for your company.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Tony. Anything else on right now?
No, great.
So let me ask too. Everybody, everybody's told to buy the software protection system and so on. McAfee, it seems as if they cause problems on your computer to make you want to buy it. Now, I don't know if that's true. It just seems like there's what do you look for if you're looking for something basic to protect, or do these things protect anymore at all?
Yeah, so the good news is that a lot of systems have sort of been building in this protection. So when Microsoft launched Windows 10, but also its predecessor, Windows 8, antivirus is actually now built in. Now, whether or not you want to rely entirely on that, obviously, is something you need to research. There are a lot of good providers, obviously McAfee was mentioned, and it's certainly one of them. You need to find one that fits your price point well. Some of them work priced better for larger businesses versus smaller. So one that fits your price point well, one that's reputable. And a lot of it's just doing your research, because there are a lot of great providers out there. But again, there is a lot of built-in protection, thankfully. But I would recommend looking out there, seeing what's available, and finding a solution that again fits your price point and fits for you. So it's a lot about researching and seeing what works well.
And Valerie, any other comments about antivirus software? That's one thing we all know.
Well, I don't want to burst anyone's bubble, but now with the introduction of artificial intelligence, there are some rogue researchers that I work with that have actually introduced methods of making your antivirus ineffective. However, that is not public information, so the actual companies that are doing the virus protection software is starting to up their game a bit. But I totally agree with John 100%. There is a lot of built-in protection that's coming with the newer computers. However, exactly to John's point, research what makes sense for you, and that is what you utilize, and just stay on top of your your updates. When there's an update that's needed in your particular environment, make sure that you're doing those updates so you're not blowing them off. A lot of times you see people who are compromised because they're out of compliance in terms of the patching that they need to do for their virus protection update.
And, you know, don't feel that you have to figure this all out on your own. You know, I know we have a couple, you know, even sub 10 employee small businesses on the line, but you can talk to computer security companies or managed service providers as they call them. And you can ask them, you know, hey, here's what I have set up. You know, if I pay, you know, $1,000, $2,000, you know, can you just give me some product recommendations? Can you help me get started? You know, some of them charge like low monthly fees, but it's not a bad idea, you know, if you're feeling overwhelmed, to reach out for help, because, you know, that initial couple $1,000s that you spend having someone help you get started and secure your network and get you off on the right foot is going to be a lot cheaper than, you know, obviously we were talking ransomware numbers that were in 5-6 figures. And that's just to pay the ransom, by the way. Valerie had a statistic, you know, showing that it goes even higher when you include reputation cost and when you include just hiring cybersecurity firms to get you back up on your feet. So, you know, you definitely want to reach out, even if it's a friend who's in the industry. But as you're taking your company larger, as you get above 10 people, you know, you really want to start to engage a professional company that says, here's what I'm doing. What recommendations do you have for me? And yeah, that's going to cost you, but it'd be well worth it.
So someone sent an email, a question in the question and answer box regarding internal threats or insider threats regarding employees taking data outside of the company. And basically, the bottom line is I have zero tolerance for that. That for me is terms of immediate, not just immediate termination, but depending upon the type of business that you have, if knowledge or information is your key, then they're basically holding you at gunpoint, and that's how you should behave. You should not only terminate them, but there should be some type of process that you take them through from the legal aspects. Part of getting to that point is having a good computer usage policy in place. And part of that computer usage policy talks to data access, what is allowable, what is not allowable. It is not a one-time thing. It is something that you do all of the time. You should also tag your data. When you have sensitive information or sensitive data, not everyone should have access to it. Not everyone should have access to all of the data. Programmers do not need access to your production data. They do not. They should have a subset of what your production data may be, but not the actual data itself. And any good programmer can actually simulate that simply by understanding what the data set looks, how it looks. But in terms of internal threats, you have a computer policy. You have them utilize the computer policy. You have them sign the computer policy. You let them know it's based on termination. And while we're at it, on your banner page on your network, if you notice when you log on for work, it comes up and says, this is a private network, and it tells you right up front what they're going to do to you if you breach that network. Put that warning up there, especially when it comes to your data. If it's your client information, if you are an insurance agency, this is client data, they do not need access to all the client data. You should have audit logs. When people are accessing different aspects of that data, you're going to know who's accessing that data and when. You do not have to program all of this in. Most applications out there now, especially any type of Salesforce data or anything like that, will capture that information for you, and you can segment how much data someone is utilizing.
Wonderful, wonderful.
I think it's important to note that, you know, remember when it comes to corporate email, you know, this is your company's information, right? So part of your computer policy is your email is our information, and if we want to look at it, we can. Now, there are some laws coming out that in various states that might actually start to prohibit that and bring some level of privacy to the work environment, which, you know, we could have a whole other webinar on. But, you know, you want to make sure that you're monitoring your corporate email, you know, and there are products, Valerie was sort of touching on data leak protection, basically. If we see certain keywords or very large files, you know, we're going to have our email system stop them and send us an email and say, hey, you know what, you want to look at this before we let it out of the network, because this might be someone trying to exfiltrate data, you know, because they're about to go to a new company and they want to take their customer list with them. There's also email archiving, which basically what that does is every time you send or receive an email, it takes a copy and puts it up in an archive, which means that, you know, if it's my last day and I'm going to send a bunch of stuff out and then I'm just going to clear my whole inbox, it's going to do nothing because A, all my data is backed up in that archive, and B, that archive is also searchable and you can put alerts on certain keywords. So if I say things like, you know, last day, or if I send, you know, 3 zip files or more in my email, it's going to, again, alert you. It's a form of data leak protection. Then you can go in and say, you know, here's what we have. And nothing I do on my end to clear out my email will get around that because it's being separately stored and archived. So there's some great solutions there. But just, again, remember, this is your data. This is your company's data. You know, so if you have a suspicion, you know, investigate it. It's definitely what you should be doing.
And one of the other things, especially with the smaller companies, unfortunately, one of the way that companies have been breached is through their ventilation system. You tend to have the ventilation systems nowadays are on a network. And for the life of me, I have no idea why your ventilation system is actually on the same exact network or segment of a network that your financial data is on. But that has happened, and there was an actual breach of a mid-sized company that had about 250 employees. And basically, usually the ventilation, the air conditioning, heating, ventilation is usually farmed out to a third-party vendor who's managing it. They have engineers around the clock who are coming in. They do share the same password because I've seen it. I've seen them only log in with one at 8 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock at night, and it's different guys. And so they share the same password. They're doing, you know, things. They're going out, and for some reason they're able to go out because they have to download from either their Siemens database, wherever they are, to get different things and to update different things. And companies are breached. They have the best security around. They have computer policies, the best security around their financial systems and everything, and yet they get breached from this third-party vendor. So your cloud providers, your heating, air conditioning, and ventilation system providers, whatever policy you have in place for your employees, they have to have that same amount of rigor for theirs.
Right. So let's talk about the cloud. And so, you know, I've always worried about the cloud. It's almost like real estate, where I put everything in the cloud and it's inexpensive now, then all of a sudden everything's in the cloud and they start charging more for that. So first, is the cloud really safe? 2, is there a risk of it becoming a whole lot more expensive since everything's in the cloud now?
So I'll comment a little here. What's interesting is there was a trend in the industry where as companies migrated from on-premises email, you know, that server in the closet, to cloud-hosted email, the instances of what we call business email compromise, where someone broke into the email, actually began increasing very rapidly. We're still seeing very high numbers. And really what happened was they went to the cloud, but with every product you look at, don't assume it's secure. And I'm talking, these are big name vendors too. Don't assume it's secure, because you have to look at the security features, and a lot of them are optional. You got to go in and turn them on, right? So the best example is people go to, you know, and I don't want to throw any company on the bus, but like Microsoft Office 365, which is used by almost every major enterprise out there, ourselves included. You know, they'll go into that and they just log in with the username and password. Here's the problem with that. Microsoft Office 365 is I think it's used by like 60% of businesses now, or 50%. It's really climbing quickly. Attackers only have one platform to target then. So all that, you know, they're going after your Microsoft Office 365 credentials. And if you log in with only username and password, I can almost guarantee you that someone's going to break into your email. And again, go take a look at your email after this call, see what's in there, and say, if someone with malicious intent broke into this, you know, how bad off am I? So it's just a matter of turning on multi-factor authentication, which in Office 365 and almost any major cloud platform is free. But just people don't do it because they say, hey, we're going to Microsoft, we're going to Google. These are big companies, everyone's using them, they must be inherently secure. You know, they're not, because by default, you know, the security is basic. So just always look into the security features of any cloud platform. Don't assume just because they're a big company that you're going insecure. And again, that multi-factor, or sometimes called two-factor authentication, that is a question you need to ask for every cloud platform. If you think about the websites you log into, if you use just username and password for anything that's important in any way, you got to look into multi-factor authentication. Make sure you get that text message or you have that app on your phone that just confirms that, yep, this is me logging in.
So multi-factor authentication, what is it? So it's something that you have, something that you know, and something that you are. And it has to be two from those three categories in order to be a two-factor. So now they have also, in addition to that, something called strong authentication, where it may be two of those things, and then also it sends you back some type of email or PIN that you have to use additionally to get into. But I totally agree with John 100%. Your company should still have good computer policy. From a personal note, I used to defend against 1 million hacks per week. That's trying to come into my bank at Deustche Bank. Now I'm defending against 1 million hacks per day. And so that's a lot of volume, and it's increasing. And it's always more in the summer than otherwise, because college students are out of college and all the computer geeks are trying to figure out how smart they are and how they can break you. And so John's laughing because he knows it's true. Well, they're home now all the time. I want them to go back to school, will you? But it's true. You have to really have common sense about what you're doing. It's like this. If you have a pocket full of money, why would you let your buddy hold your money because you're both going out drinking? I mean, seriously, put it in a safe place. You know, just use your common sense. Common sense approach prevails, even with computers.
Yeah, well, that's well said. So now I'm a business owner sitting on this Zoom call, and my head's probably spinning because there's a whole bunch of stuff out there. And now with COVID, I'm going to have to let somebody go. You know, what are the procedures? I mean, what they're using, they have their computer at their desk, but I'm going to let them go. What is the best practice in doing that? Both of you have done that in your companies, I know. How do you do that gracefully, and what have you found? What have you learned?
Well, that's why preparation is key here, because if you're at the point where you're going to terminate an employee and you're saying, well, how do we make sure that, you know, all their data is off their personal devices? You know, it's almost too late if you don't have an answer for that. So now's the time to start thinking about it. Even if you have all great employees, you really never know. And someone may seek a new opportunity. You really don't want your customer information or your proprietary information sitting on their home computer. So you need to prepare for that. You know, again, on the cell phone side, we talked about mobile device managers. If you're going to terminate someone, you know, right before you do it, you click the button to remove all corporate information from their cell phone. And it's easy. You know, without a solution like that, though, you might have to say, well, hey, can I see your phone? And you know, do you mind if I just go in and make sure I delete the corporate email from it to make sure that it's off there? You want to have an automated solution for that. And again, to Valerie's points early on, you know, make sure that you've been segregating your corporate data and from people's personal computers. Because again, frankly, if you have an issue where people have been downloading stuff to their personal computers and that's a major concern of yours, I don't really have a good answer for you, except you need them to bring in their personal computer. Hopefully they're willing, and you need to look at it, remove any company documents. I mean, again, there's not a great answer if you've allowed them to use their personal computer with no controls at all. So start thinking about that as soon as possible.
And thank you, John. That was awesome. To add to that, if you have not done that, it's illegal to blow up someone's computer, but I have seen it done. But you technically can go and blow up someone's personal computer where they cannot restore your personal data back. It is illegal in this country to do that. So please do not do that. What I agree with John. What your approach should be is to start implementing your computer policy, all the steps and procedures that we discussed on this call. We can go into a more detailed call down the road, but if you're going to do that, even if you're not going to do that, and you do have employees who have personal corporate data on their personal laptops, now is a good time to start putting in place your computer policy.
So we're hearing more and more, I mean, this relates to security, of employers being able to track whether people are working or not. You know, when this new Zoom, you know, people can tell where you are and what you are, what, you know, so if companies are doing more of that, you know, how do they do that? And I'm sure you have that. Can you talk a little bit about that for companies that are new to this?
So I can handle that. So basically, there are geographical positioning systems and GPS that they can include on your devices is similar to when you have your cell phone and you want to know what restaurants or whatever is in the particular area. But basically they can track and they do know when you're online and what you're doing. But you don't have to actually have that turned on. You can determine if that's a policy within your company or not, but there are some privacy laws also that needs to be addressed. So that is something that you have to have a conversation with your HR department. Some companies may say this is the policy of the company. I know if you drive trucks for a particular company, they want to make sure that you're really going out on service calls and not at the beach and saying the customer didn't answer the door. I get it, but there are some privacy, because for your personal well-being as well, that you can address with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just say, listen, there's ways and software out there, a lot of software that will allow you to say, hey, here's everything your employee did on their computer today, right? I personally like the trust but verify. So you have web filtering, you're blocking malicious websites. To a degree, you're blocking some attention distractors. Although if someone wants to check a score on ESPN and because they're working until 8 o'clock at night on a project, I say so be it, as long as the website's safe, right? The one thing I'll caution is, from an IT standpoint, in my years in the business, you always just want to make sure you're right on these things, right? So if you're monitoring your employees, first, I don't really like the idea, because hopefully you have some trust in your employees. And frankly, if an employee is truly not doing any work, you should see that without monitoring. Their deliverables should be terrible. And then you can investigate, and that's that trust but verify. Hey, we have web filtering logs that we can look into. We have other logs we can look into, but I'm not sitting there at the end of the day looking at what every single employee did. So, but because the challenge is that, you may go in and says, hey, this guy was on ESPN for 30 minutes. And you right away go after that employee and say, what were you doing? You were browsing the web, this system's telling me. And they say, well, listen, I worked a 15-hour day, and I went on ESPN for a few minutes just to check the score of the game because I couldn't watch it. What a toxic culture you're creating,
Right.
So you got to be careful. And anytime you're monitoring an employee, you're accusing an employee, you got to be right. And what helps in that is, okay, we have deliverables that are down and you're just underperforming. And now, when we look in as well, we're seeing that you're spending a lot of time on websites that really aren't work related. And so you're having a multiple conversation there, but you're focusing on the performance, not on some computer logs that just can be notoriously inaccurate. So just a word of caution for those of you who really want to dive into monitoring. You might want to consider finding some new employees instead of being so aggressive monitoring. So, but there's a lot of software out there where you can do all sorts of things.
And it depends on what they're doing, right? Because sometimes people are doing research and learning new things or sharing. So I 100% agree with you, John, on that one.
Well, just one final, we're almost at time, and we're on a Zoom call, so I have to ask about the Zoom world, the Zoom WebEx. Any advice? We have, and Tony was on, we had somebody and on this webinar, they responded with an email. They came in and said some racist things on the call. Any advice for all of us who are doing Zoom calls? And I'll give you both a chance, and then we'll end it up for Zoom to make it even more secure.
So Zoom bombing is called Zoom bombing, and that is something that is known. There is a way for you to control the administration of your site where you can actually know who's actually coming in, have them registered. And if it's someone who you are unfamiliar with, you can actually prevent them from actually making comments or doing questions. But that is something that Zoom has known for a while. And so they are looking to make the platform more secure. I think that particular incident you and I talked about a moment, but there are ways of actually securing it. And you should always never leave a meeting that's 100% open. You would like to, but you just cannot do that.
Excellent. And finally, John, any comments?
I'll just say, remember those fundamentals of cybersecurity. When you're going to a cloud platform or software platform, look into the security functionality and make sure you're using it. So Zoom has started enabling passwords by default, as have a lot of their competitors. But they also have features like when you're in a meeting and you say, okay, hey, we have these 5 people, you can lock the meeting and prevent anyone else from coming in. Mm-hmm. There's something called a waiting room where, as people come to the meeting, you have to allow them in. Right? So these are features that they're not enabled by default, but if you have a particularly sensitive meeting, yeah, you can keep these people out. And Zoom has done that. A lot of their competing vendors have done that. So always investigate the security features that you can do on your application. And it's straightforward to do, but it's just not there by default. So don't assume that, hey, I read in the newspaper Zoom fixed Zoom bombing. If you have an open meeting and you forward the invite around, but the invite has the password in it, remember? So you forward that invite around, anyone can join. And I'll just say, don't be afraid of new technology. New technology is here to help. I spoke to a business that was concerned with web conferencing. They saw some of the bad press. They're afraid someone's going to join their conference and listen in. And I said, well, what are you using today? And they said, we're using one of those free conference lines. So who's joining that? And they had a bit of a light bulb moment because they said, yeah, I don't know. And there's a lot of examples of a salesperson quits a company and he knows every day at 8:30, here's the number I dial in to keep listening to their pipeline call. And it's more common than you'd think. So using these technologies properly, you can create a much more secure situation than you've ever had in the past.
Well, this is we're at time, and Valerie, I want to thank you. You're wonderful as always. John, you're fantastic. Tony, it's great with your partnership. So I want to thank everybody for listening in. Again, this is recorded. It'll be on our Rothman YouTube site. Great information. I've learned a lot, and thank you all. Have a great weekend. Take care.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye-bye.